That's what all good scientists do. He said, oh, okay, well, forget about what I was originally going to talk about. This is actually more interesting. I'm going to try and find out how this works. Yeah, so it's exactly the same. One of the other interesting things about social referencing is, especially as the children get older, so by the time they're 15 to 18 months, they'll actually do things to try to get emotional information from the people around them. So it isn't just that if the mother smiles, then the baby will open the box to play with the robot. When the baby sees something like a strange robot, they'll actually look, the first thing they'll do is look over to the mother or the caregiver or someone else to sort of see how are they going to react to this before the baby decides how they're going to react themselves. So the babies are actually soliciting information from the mother. And by now, you guys have probably seen a little bit of the Bunny tapes. So you can see that Bunny was somewhere between extremely charming and extremely manipulative. And when he was doing social referencing about that age, and you can see some of this in the tapes, what he would do, for instance, was when he did something that I didn't think that he should do, he would give me the most beautiful smile that you could ever imagine in the world. And you can see he's kind of eating avocado with his fingers, and as he's doing it, he's looking at me, and he just has this gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, beautiful grin. And if so much as one little corner of my mouth went up, then there was no way that I was going to keep him from doing this. But if it was something serious, like crossing the street by himself, it didn't matter how much he was grinning at me, I'd yell and say, no, you can't do that, in which case he wouldn't do it. So it was as if not only was he trying to get my reaction, but it was as if he was testing to see, okay, is that reaction really, are you really serious about this? Is this your sincere emotion, or is this just one of those, no, you can't do it kind of emotions that moms are always producing? And in fact, there's some more recent studies that show that by the time babies are 15 months old, not only can they tell about emotions, but they can tell the difference between a sincere expression of emotion and just sort of a faked, artificial expression of emotion. That's actually work that was done right here by a graduate student right here at Berkeley. Okay. By the time the children are 2, they're actually using emotion terms appropriately in their spontaneous language. So one of the interesting things that people discovered is among the very, very first words that children are using to talk about mental states at all are emotion words. So children are starting to say things like or sad or scary or happy from the time they're not even quite 2. So they're already starting to use some of these words to talk about the way that they feel. So even little Augie, who's 18 months, now will say things like, if you ask him about skating, which he's just starting to do as the child of good Canadian grandparents and parents, he'll say skating like. So he's already telling you not only about the fact that he went skating, but what his emotional reaction to skating, which is a fantastic thing. He also says gram love, but that may be influenced by other factors as well. Okay, so by 2 they're using emotion terms appropriately, and they seem to be representing an understanding about emotions and understanding the consequences of emotions. As I mentioned before, by the time children are 4 to 6, they start to understand as well as produce emotional masking. So now it's not just that they can change their facial expression to be polite, for example, but they start to be able to understand, if you ask them about someone else, that someone else might not really be showing the emotion that they feel. So you ask them a story where you say it's Johnny's birthday and his grandmom gives him socks and he really wanted a fire engine, but he smiles and says thank you for the socks. Is he really happy or is he really disappointed? And interestingly, even 4-year-olds will say, oh, he's really happy. If he said he was happy, then he must really be happy. And it's only when children are about 6 that they start to recognize that you might act as if you were happy, but really be disappointed, and so on. So it's only relatively late that children start to understand about emotional masking in others. And then starting from about 5 or 6 and through the school age period, children start to be able to start understanding some of these more complex emotions, like the subconscious emotions, like pride and guilt and shame, and some of the more complicated ambivalence, some of the more complicated emotions that we've talked about before. And it's also true that in the school age years, children are still continuing to figure out the causes and the consequences of emotions. So, for example, if you ask children if Sally's dog has died and it died in this particular place in the vet's office, and you could ask, well, will she be sad when she passes the vet's office? Interestingly, again, it's not really until the school age period that children will say, yeah, just being reminded of the other time that she was sad will make her sad all by itself. So the children are only starting to recognize some of the causes, the reasons why you feel emotions, and the consequences of feeling emotions in the school age period. And I suppose you could argue that this is a lifelong task for all of us, is figuring out exactly why it is that we and other people feel the emotions we do, and figuring out what the consequences are of feeling those emotions. Another interesting thing about emotions is that emotions differ a lot in individual people. So I've tried to, there's been some themes in the class, and one of the things that I've emphasized in the class is that you see these individual differences in different babies and different children from the time they're very young, maybe even from the time they're born. And a lot of what development is about the interaction between these individual differences, individual temperaments, individual ways of dealing with the world, and the environment the child finds themselves in. And one of the dimensions where we seem to see the most individual differences, the differences in what people call temperament, is in the emotional reactions that babies and children have to the world around them. And in fact, the temperament, there seem to be a number of different kinds of different emotional dimensions that differentiate people. So it isn't just as simple as just saying, okay, this person has an easy temperament and this person has a difficult temperament. There are actually lots of different ways that babies differ in terms of their emotional reactions to the world. So for example, some babies seem to be more fearful than other babies. So even if you're looking at very young babies, if, say, they hear a loud noise, some of the babies are more likely to be upset and scared about the loud noise, and other babies are just sort of curious or interested in the loud noise. So how fearful babies are varies a lot. Some babies are very uninhibited and bold and brave and curious, and some babies are much more timid and show more fear across a wider range of different situations. A kind of different dimension of being distressed is how irritable babies are. So some babies, even if they're not scared of something that goes on, get kind of overexcited and fussy as a result of too much stimulation. So it isn't so much that they're scared because something happens in the world, like there's a loud noise, but having a loud noise or, say, being in a room full of lots of people just makes these babies fussy and irritable, and they have a hard time dealing with the extra stimulation. It's not that they withdraw the way the fearful babies do. Instead, they kind of act out, they thrash around and they cry and they get fussy and irritable when more stimulation is going on. And again, yeah? Right. Right. So one of the questions that comes up is how much continuity is there between the way that babies behave on these dimensions early in life and later in life? And again, it's kind of boring, but it's the usual story. There's some continuity, but there's also possibilities for change. So, for example, how the babies react, whether they're fearful of a stranger or not, is going to be different depending on whether they're 3 months old or whether they're 9 months old. But sort of, if you take the babies who are scared of a loud noise when they're 3 months old, those babies are also likely to be more scared of a stranger when they're 9 months old and they're facing stranger anxiety. And there's some evidence that they'll grow up to be adults who are more anxious about losing their job when they're adults. So even though the thing that you're scared of is different, this kind of general tendency to be scared or tendency to be fussy seems to be something that's relatively, sort of surprisingly constant emotionally over the course of development. Attention span is another thing that seems to differ in babies. So some babies seem to be very easily distractible. They look around at lots and lots of different things at once. Some babies seem to be more focused on specific things that interest them for longer. And this attention span difference, I think, is interesting because there's reason to believe that this is true in adults and school-age children as well. And you may have just read in the paper that there was what I think is a kind of appalling statistic that 11% of American children are on medication for ADHD now, more than that for high school teenage boys. Now that's kind of weird, the idea that 11% of children would be suffering from some kind of neurological disorder. And I think a much better way of understanding that is that there's this wide range of attentional styles that we see even in babies, from people who tend to focus and pay attention to just one thing to people who are paying attention to a much wider range of stimuli in the environment. And it's only when we're in a culture where we put tremendous emphasis on schooling and within schooling put tremendous emphasis on focused attention that people at one end of that range that being at one end of that range becomes so problematic that people are willing to do things like give kids medication to stop them being at the end of that range. So I think the fact that these attentional differences are one of the things that we can identify even in babies as being a dimension of temperament that varies a lot, I think that suggests that the idea that somehow there's this special disease called ADD or ADHD that 11% of children have is probably not the right way of thinking about what's going on. Now, it is true that children who are way out at the end of that spectrum might have real problems and you might feel as if you wanted to medicate them. But the general picture is that attention span is definitely one of the things where we see a lot of individual variation even among babies. Activity level is another one where we see another dimension where there's a lot of consistent individual variation. So some babies jump and squirm and run and bounce and are always moving around, and some babies are sweet, placid little Buddhas who are very happy to sit in your lap and sit in one place and look around them and see what's going on around them. Positive affect is another one. So some babies are even non-fussy babies. Some babies are very grave and serious and look at the world with this kind of little furrowed brow and serious expression. And then some babies, like Bunny, as you'll see in the tapes, are just always smiling and warm and happy and see the world in an incredibly positive way. One of my stories about Bunny is at one point when he was a little older than kids in that video, he turned around, looked outside, and said, "Mama, the sky, it's blue, my favorite color." So that's kind of the way that babies with positive affects see the world. There's these amazing things like they actually made the sky be your favorite color, and so how could you ever be miserable? You should always be happy as a result. And there are equally fussy babies who have just the opposite reaction to the nature of the world. Yeah. Right. We're going to get to that point. That's the next slide, Alice. Let me just hold off and we'll get to that. So the last dimension is this rhythmicity, which is essentially how regular is your life? How much do you go to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time, work on a kind of simple routine? How important is that? And how much are you all over the place and chaotic, and you might wake up one time at one point and another time at another point? And again, this is something that from the perspective of parents, the fact that a baby who's got a very regular schedule and sleeps very easily at the same time is going to be an easier baby to take care of than a baby who wants to take a nap at 11 one day and then doesn't want to take a nap at all the next day. Okay, so this leads to the point about the environment. So we seem to see this variation on these dimensions in babies even when they're very small, even when they're infants. And there seems to be some regularity about some continuity between the way that babies act on these dimensions early on and then what they are like as adults. And you can probably already think that you know people even as adults who differ on these different dimensions. But an interesting question is exactly this question about what's the relationship between this and the environment that you find yourself in. And it's interesting because one of the puzzles of developmental psychology is you can have two children growing up in very similar environments. One of them is extremely resilient and deals with their environment and grows up fine. The other one ends up having all sorts of problems and troubles. And it's easy to say, oh, okay, well, the reason why that child ended up being a drug abuser was because he was in an unhappy household. But then the brother of that child in exactly the same unhappy household grows up to be the mayor of New York, right? Mayor of Boston. The famous example is the two brothers, one of whom became the mayor of Boston and one of whom actually went to jail for 20 years as a gangster. So why would you see these differences in the same environment? And the first idea that people had was just that some temperaments might make you more vulnerable to some environments than other temperaments. So if you're a fearful baby and you grow up in a threatening environment where lots of bad things really can happen to you, then that's going to ramp up the impact of that environment compared to if you were a brave baby, then the fact that scary things happen doesn't bother you or affect you as much, doesn't lead you to withdraw as much. But actually the new idea, which I think is actually really interesting, is a hypothesis that Jay Belsky has had, that he calls the plasticity hypothesis. And what he suggests is some of these temperament differences may not just be do you do better or worse in an environment, but that some babies are more sensitive to whether their environment is good or bad versus other babies. So the thought is that some of the more reactive babies, the babies who are, say, more irritable or fearful or paying attention to their environment, they may actually do better in a very good, rich environment than the more placid, serene babies, but they'll do worse in a more difficult environment. The kind of phrase that people use to describe this is some babies are like orchids and some babies are like dandelions. So, the dandelion babies, basically dandelions thrive no matter what. It can be rainy or it can be dry. Anywhere you go, the dandelions will grow up fine. Whereas with orchids, if they don't get incredibly good care, then they just wither and die. But if they do get incredibly good care, then they can become these amazing plants. And there's just a paper that's out in Psychological Science, for example, this week showing that something like that seems to be true with infants. So they looked at how reactive infants were when they were 5 months old, what kind of temperament they had. And then they looked at what they were like when they were 18 months old. And it turned out that the babies who had a more reactive temperament, who reacted more for better or for worse early on, also did much better in a good environment and did worse in a bad environment than the babies who were less reactive. So part of it may not just be do you do well or do you do badly, but how sensitive are you to the environment that you find yourself in. And we'll talk about that a little more when we talk about